Wally, can you bring that volume down that we have?
Good evening, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. This is Reverend Larry Camp, the pastor of the Bethlehem Baptist Church, affectionately known as the Bethlehem Nation. And certainly we are thankful to all of you. This is episode 38 of what we call Insight, which started on July 15th of 2020. Insight is a program designed to give this audience an insightful look into the lives of creators and innovators. Insight is also the artistic and creative wing of the Bethlehem Nation. And when we interview people such as our guest tonight, they'll be able to say some things to us as it relates not only to what they do, what they've experienced personally, but what is going on now and their opinions of the world on today. Now, before I introduce my guest, I just want to make people aware of the various social outlets or various social shows on social media. Word on Wednesdays by Bishop Timothy J. Clark, First Baptist Church of God, which is in Columbus, Ohio. And then you should know about Morning Manna by Dr. Johnny Green of the Mount Nebo Baptist Church in Harlem. And then Bring Your Own Bible, BYOBB, by Minister Cheryl Jordan. And For Real Friday, she hosts both of those shows. She comes to the Community Baptist Church in Queens, where her pastor is Reverend C. Omar Evans. And then Wellness Wednesday is by Reverend Vanessa Guest. And she gives us topics of how to be well and how to think positively as well. And then we have what they call the Fee Hive, which is hosted by Felicia Evans, the leading lady of the Community Baptist Church in Queens, where all of those last three, their pastor is C. Omar Evans. So we're glad that you would certainly look on to what they have to say, as well as the brother that I'm going to present as well. I want to thank our Insight staff, Reverend Derek Jackson, Linda Atkinson Kendall, Asia Camp Jackson, and Niger Camp for being the wonderful producers of this show, and they have brought their creative measures to this, and so we're thankful. Now, Pastor David Wright, it's good to see you, man.
What's up, Pastor Camp? It's good to see you too.
Yeah, you see what I got on, right? You see that, right?
Yeah, it looked like you got on some Brooklyn Nets stuff. We'll let that pass tonight.
Let me actually, first of all, let me congratulate you. Number one, you have a radio station, not a radio station, but a radio program called Believe Radio.
Yes.
And what is the format of that, Pastor?
Yes, Believe Radio Bay Area. That is an internet station that plays 24-hour gospel music. And they're giving me a show on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Yeah.
And it started, it's amazing how it started. On Monday nights, once the pandemic started, my choir, we usually rehearse on Monday nights. So we couldn't get together. So I just started playing old gospel music, some of my father's late hits. And it just blew up from there every Monday night. And now they contacted me and said, we want to give you your own radio show, Vintage Inspirations with David Wright. So I'll be playing music from major artists, independent artists from all over the country, giving everybody a chance to be on radio. And it is a Billboard recording radio as well.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, so God just did that thing for me, man. It's been going well so far.
And then you have an album, Let the Organ Play.
Yes, Let the Organ Play is an organ CD, instrumental organ CD. Nothing but organ playing and hymns and just good church music. Because again, during this pandemic, so many people are missing out on the chance to be in a church atmosphere and experience some old-fashioned gospel church music. You know, everything is good online. We do what we can. But that organ is something about the sound of the organ that puts you in a church mindset. So Let the Organ Play was birthed out of this pandemic, and it was just something that I decided to do. I went to the studio and did it, and now it's nominated for a Stellar Award.
Right, exactly.
I've been playing the organ for over 25 years. And my father, who was also a great organist in his own right back in his day, the late Reverend Timothy Wright, he always wanted to do an organ CD, but never got around to doing it. So I dedicated this to him.
That's nice. The thing about your dad is that I knew him. Of course, there were people who were closer to him than I was, but we would run up into each other in the bank. I was making a withdrawal. He would come in and make a deposit, and we would see each other. And he preached at the Bethlehem Nation twice, certainly in the mid 90s. And we had him to come. And one night we preached he invited me to preach for him. And my daughters, Asia and Nisha, went with me, as well as my wife. And your dad gave them the latest CD that he had for free. And so they never forgot him. And of course, my daughters know you. They'll never forget you as well. And certainly with the inspiration that you have been in their lives. And I think it's important for this audience to know the impact of your dad. Now, you described one thing I heard you say on one of your shows, and how your father was on that organ. And if he was sitting next to someone on the organ, he would do something that would make it right. Describe that, if you will, Pastor.
Yes, I'll take myself for an example. If I was playing a song and I wasn't quite playing it right, my father would come and sit on the edge of the organ and show me how to play it. He'll put his hand over mine, and then he starts scooting me over on that organ bench until I'm on the edge and I'm not going to get up. And then he just take over the song. And I brought that up because a lot of today's musicians are very sensitive, and they will get offended when someone would do that. You know, you can't really tell them nothing now, but I grew up when people would tell you, yo, that's not right. You're not playing it right. You're not playing it wrong. And I just grew up knowing that if you didn't know it, learn it so you can do it better next week.
Now, why is it? Go ahead. Go right ahead, Pastor.
Yeah, and that's what my father would do. He would, if you wasn't doing it right, he gonna show you, no, you're doing it wrong. This is how you do it. Learn it and come back and do it better next week. And that's what made me and my brothers the musicians that we are today.
Now, why is it, do you think, that some musicians, some young ones, not all of them, don't listen or don't want to follow instructions? Because that seems to be the mantra for ministry all over the place.
Yes.
Not just the pulpit, not just the music, but all over the place. Why do you think that? Why is that mindset like that? It's because they're very creative. It's because of their know-how, or they think they know more. Why is that?
Well, it's that I feel, and this is not all of them, but most of the young musicians, they feel that there's nothing they can learn from someone that is older or not, or that's their time has passed. So they feel like there's nothing they can learn from them. But what I tell them all, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Everything that these musicians are doing today, and they are great musicians, there was somebody doing it back then. It might not have been understood like it is understood today, but there's nothing new under the sun. And we have some great people, even in ministry. They just they find a new way to do something, and now you can't tell them anything. But everything that you do that's new, there has to be some foundation to it. So they have to be willing to humble themselves. Humility is not at an all-time high. they have to be able to humble themselves and know that you're not being disrespected just because somebody's trying to teach you something or show you something. They're actually trying to make you better.
Well, you sound and talk just like your dad, by the way. I mean, I guess everybody tell you that, but you.
Oh man,
just like your dad. And I guess as you get older, you're gonna get the neck too, the back of the neck kind of thing.
Oh yeah. That he had little Frank footage back there. You said he preached for you in the early 90s. We used to live over by Bethlehem.
Okay.
and that's why you saw him in the bank all the time, because I went
at Citibank, as a matter of fact, yeah.
Yeah, I went to George Gershwin right down the block from y'all. We lived on Porcelain Avenue.
Yeah.
So that and you would see he was just such a people person. People just see him in the store, and he was just regular him.
Now I'll tell you a story about your dad. I came out of Mount Sinai, and in the 70s, there was a gospel chorus in Mount Sinai Church. They used to always invite Washington Temple Choir. And of course, your father played for Bishop F.D. Washington.
Yeah.
And the pastor at the time was Reverend Lyman Lowe, who had brought $100,000 organ. And so when Pastor Wright would get on the organ and play, I mean, he was heavy on his foot. So the pulpit, the rail between here and the pulpit, Reverend Lowe be sitting here. And as your dad is playing, he would look back to see how his feet was kicking it. He always got paranoid when your dad got on that organ, because Reverend Lowe was saying, I paid $100,000 for this organ. I ain't paying this guy to ruin it. And whatever he did, he just put some umph into that because he loved it, which is really one of the things I appreciate about him and your mom. Because as we continue to talk tonight, we, not only are we talking about music, but we're talking about legacy and family, which plays a very big part in this. Now, for the African-American church, well, you can say all churches, but certainly from our history, how important is music in the worship experience?
Music is very important. It's very important because in the worship experience, when it's done correctly, music, the worship rides in on that music.
Yeah.
And it goes hand in hand, because the wrong music will kill the flow. Worship has to flow, and the wrong music will destroy a flow that's trying to come. And even in biblical times, send for me a minstrel. Send the Levites first. All of that stuff. Music is vitally important, and one of the greatest biblical stories that I love to talk about is when Saul was demon possessed, when he was dealing with all kinds of depression and borderline suicidal. He didn't ask for a preacher. He didn't ask for a prophet. He said, go get that boy David. They sent for David to come play demons out of him. So worship music makes the way clear for worship to have its way. Music makes the way clear. So that's why it's vitally important. And a lot of times, people in church say, oh, well, we don't need no music. You may not need it, but it sure enough helps.
It sure does. Now, Pastor Wright, discuss your parents. Pastor Timothy Wright, your wonderful mother, Betty Wright. In your words.
Yes. My parents were great parents. My mom, my dad, we grew up in a household with both parents. And I know that's not a very popular thing in our culture today. But we grew up in a household with both parents. My parents were amazing. And my father, everybody knows my dad, the late Reverend Timothy Wright. He was gospel legend, known as the godfather of gospel. But to us, to me and my four brothers, it was 5 boys. It's rough raising 5 boys.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. How was that?
Yeah, and raising 5 boys in a 3-bedroom apartment in East New York, Brooklyn. And all of us turned out pretty all right. We didn't turn out perfect, but we turned out all right. And my mom and my dad, my father was just a regular guy. He was everything to everybody else, but he was always just dad to us. I didn't really understand his stardom until I started to travel the country with him playing the organ. And that didn't happen until I was about 19 years old. I was figuring, yeah, that's my dad on the organ. That's my dad singing. but I didn't know that the worldwide impact that he had.
Wow.
And he could not have that impact without my mom, because the wrong woman will pull you right back down, but the right woman will help push you. And my mom and my dad, I feel they were made for each other. And even in ministry, my father, seemingly as a pastor, he was the one that dealt with the praise and had the nice, he was nice, trying to be as nice to people as they can. And then my mom, when he was nice, she was stern. When he was stern, she was nice.
Oh, good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. They played the good cop, bad cop role perfectly. But in the household, my mom, she made sure that her boys were respectful. And my father had a different way of doing things. My mom had another way of doing things. When it came to even our dating and things, my father said, well, keep going till you find the right one. The mom is, settle yourself down. You don't want to, you're not trying to sow your royal oats here. So they had different ways of doing it. And they were just great parents. And my mom was an awesome preacher of the gospel. My father never went to Bible school. He got everything. He would say he got the street anointing.
Yeah.
And my mom went on to get her master's in divinity and all of that stuff. So they worked hand in hand. She had the book knowledge, and he had the F.D. Washington, Mother Finster knowledge, just being there. And that's how Grace Tabernacle was birthed, from those two great people of God.
Thank God for them. How has that inspired you to become the husband and the father you are?
Yes, it has extremely inspired me very well, because I can't use the excuse, I can't be a good father because I never saw a good father.
Yeah.
That's an excuse people make, but I don't have that excuse, because I saw a good father. I was raised by a good father, and it has helped me to be the father that I am today to my 3 children. And I can't do everything like my father did and like my mom did, because you can't discipline your kids the way my parents, 5 boys. My mom used to have to tie us up because she couldn't beat us all at the same time. So we, you spit, you eat the meat and you spit out the bones.
Yeah, the bones, yeah.
Yeah. So it has inspired me, and I'm hoping that I can be half the father that my dad was to me and my brothers. He raised us to be men. He raised us to take care of our families. And there was a time when my mom, when things was rough, my mom was working every day. She was working just as hard as my father. But one day I remember my father came home he was working at 120 Broadway in Manhattan.
Oh yeah.
And he came home and he said, I'm not going back to work. I'm going to do full-time ministry. And my mom said, okay, God bless you. And she was working at a place called e.s.t.
Yeah.
And he said, you ain't working either. And she said, wait, now you're going to leave your job and go full-time ministry, and you don't want me to work. I want you to stay home and take care of this family, take care of the house. We got 5 boys. At this time, my baby brother was born. I was about 6 or 7 years old, maybe 8. And he said, you're not going to work. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make sure this family has everything it needs. And he went out and he began to, God opened doors for him. He would travel and do all these different things. And we never wanted for nothing. We had some rough nights. We had some Frank and Beans nights.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Thank God we still made it through. And that has inspired me to make sure I keep food on my table, keep a roof over my family's head, because that's how I was brought up. It is the man's responsibility. That's just what I was taught. It was the man's responsibility to make sure the household has what it needs.
The narrative on one of the songs your father made, which I can relate to, when he said, if you caught the A train, if you get up, you can hear people, the saints singing way off yonder. Then Wilbur Davis, I remember seeing one time. I mean, he was a skinny cat, but he would play
the Hawaiian guitar.
That's right. And when he mentioned the Fairhaven Funeral Home, the reason why I remember that, when my mom passed, that was the funeral home that took care of her remains. So I can, as he does that narrative, I can see coming off the A train. And I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and my grandmother lived in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And I'll say this, you know, as a teenager growing up, I went to boys' high school, just like you went to boys and girls. I went to boys' high school when there were no girls. You understand?
Wow.
But so I went to boys, and if you had to see girls, you had to take the shuttle to go to Clara Barton or Prospect Heights. And if you were desperate, you go to Bishop McDonald. So those are the three schools. Those are the three schools. So when he did that song, it was the first urban Brooklyn narrative that I heard, because he said, I don't come from Georgia, I don't come from the Alabama. You know, it literally was concrete in its description, and I still love that song, which is in my library to this day.
Been born again.
I've been born again, yes, sir. And before that, I used to think that God didn't save nothing but people from the South. I didn't think God saved people from the North, and because all the preachers I heard were from the South, they were all from the South. So, but that song helped in a lot of the thinking that I remembered, and how, well, what I've always said is that when we talk about people in Brooklyn, and that the Lord does save people in New York. In fact, I'm a product of urban renewal, how he renewed my soul and renewed my spirit.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, considering the trial, because I know I've seen your post, considering the trial going on right now, George Floyd, and spilling over to the Dante Wright killing in Minnesota. How would you assess that, and for the future of this country and for the world?
Well, regarding the whole trial in George Floyd, I've been heavily involved with that, because me and Terrence Floyd, George Floyd's brother, are very good friends.
Wow.
So this trial is more than just this situation. America is on trial, and this has to go the right way. And I'm afraid if it doesn't, they'll see a revolt like they've never seen before. Because to kill a man on live television while everybody is watching, while the world is shut down, and to keep your knee on his neck, we thought it was 8 minutes, it's actually 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
Right.
And if they see that they can get away with that, then there's nothing that they can't do to us. So this is putting America on trial. And then while this trial is going on,
right,
10 miles away, a young man, 20, the nerve, I mean, the nerve to even, okay, it was a mistake. Well, why even tase him if it was a mistake? But the nerve to even just let this happen again in the same place, 10 miles away.
Yeah.
With somebody. George Floyd is from another generation. He's 46.
Right.
This young man is only 20 years old. So it's horrifying. And the one thing about it, if people are scared enough, they'll fight harder. And right now, I'm scared for my sons.
Yeah.
Because I have a 24-year-old son and I have a 14-year-old son. And my 24-year-old son, he's very, very mellow. He's not as big. He's maybe about 5'10". But my 14-year-old son, I'm worried more about him because he's big for his age. And that the size, even of a young black man, intimidates white officers. He's 6'4" already.
Wow.
And he's already
6'4" at 14?
At 14 years old, 6'3" and a half, 6'4", and at 14 years old. And if he were to get stopped by the police, he'll be scared and he'll be nervous, and they'll take every little thing as a threat. I made a post. When do we become a threat? Is it in the crib? Are we threats in the crib? Do we become threats in high school? Or
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah.
When do we become a threat to the people, to white America? And right now, I'm praying that these officers are charged to the fullest, and not just charged, but convicted and found guilty. Because if they're not, then it leads us. When you have no hope, you come out fighting all. We won't be able to contain the anger that our people will have.
So, having heard you say that, Pastor, as a parent, and I'm asking this question forthright because you do know there are clergy in different age groups who don't speak on injustice at all. What they say is, preach Jesus and nothing else, forgetting the fact that injustice and calling for right is Jesus. How do you respond to something like that among the clergy community?
Absolutely. Well, I say they're scared to preach it. There's no way you can pastor in an urban community and not bring up what's going on in the community, not bring up what we are dealing with. Yes, we are preaching Jesus, but even, you know what, I say, like, Jesus was for civil rights. Jesus was a advocate for that. If he saw things that were not right, he spoke on it. And for us to just hide behind the pulpit and not get involved with this, it's a shame. It's a shame because the Black church has been involved in the civil rights movement since before I was even born.
And before
the civil rights movement was birthed out of the church.
Right.
And we know that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, he was all this, he was all that, but he was a reverend behind the pulpit before all that. And he spoke on these issues, and I would challenge especially a Black pastor. It's even the white pastor that pastor Black members. You have to speak on this. You have to say something on this, because your congregation, they need to know where you stand, and they need to know, where do we fit in this biblically? Where do we fit in this from God's standpoint? Do we just sit back and continue to turn the other cheek? But there are some times where God says, no, it's time to fight. And that's where I am, Pastor Camp. I can't stay silent about these issues, because you have to put yourself out there on the front line. You can't just lead in the four walls, but you got to lead in your community as well.
Absolutely. My guest tonight, the Reverend David Wright, the Cash App that will come up across the screen. You will see, by all means, even while I am interviewing him, do not hesitate to be a blessing to him. And as you can see, $, David Wright Music. That's very simple, $, David Wright Music. Our guests for the next few weeks that are coming up, brothers and sisters, next week will be Pastor Cynthia McCants, senior pastor of the Gethsemane at New Gethsemane East in Long Island. Of course, the senior pastor there is Bishop Jason McCants, and so she will be on next Wednesday. Following her will be Jolanda Headley. Now, Jolanda Headley is an executive life coach, and she's the owner and founder of Joe's Music Academy of Music, New York. Attended Alliance Theological Seminary with her, bright young lady, and certainly a goal visionary in every sense of the word. Following Jolanda Headley will be the Reverend Al Sharpton, founder and president of the National Action Network in New York, which they have their convention going on now virtually, that you can see that discussing the George Floyd case and as well as the Dante shooting that took place with Brother Dante. And then following that, we have, well, that'll be it. That'll be it for now. So we just have Pastor David Wright. Now, let me ask you this, Pastor.
Okay.
Now, by being the pastor of New Gethsemane Tabernacle Christian Center, what were the challenges and adjustments you've made in you and in the lives of your family? I mean, from the transition of being the gifted, talented musician to succeeding your father, how were those adjustments?
Yes, that's New Grace Tabernacle.
New Grace, I'm sorry, yes.
So that was a major, oh man, that was a major adjustment in my life. It's a story, Pastor Camp. I mean, I never wanted to be a pastor at all. I was fine being my father's musician, being my father's adjutant, being his producer of music, but things happen. You know, the goal was, if anything were to happen to my father, my mom would take over the church, and me and my brothers would help my mom. But when you lose your pastor and your co-pastor at the same time,
wow,
it was a huge struggle. So the story, what happened, you know, when my father passed away, and a lot of people don't know, if you don't know anything about Kojic, they don't like to leave a church vacant for long.
Right.
So after the funeral, I was installed pastor the very next week. So I had no time to grieve. I had no time to mourn my dad. I had to jump right into that. So in my naive thinking, I'm thinking everybody's gonna love me because they love my father. I'm thinking, hey, y'all know me. I'm Davey. I'm Dave. I've been here all my life. You seen me, you watched me grow up. Some of y'all babysat me, and you see me with my father. And to my surprise, some of the enemies that my father had became my enemies. And some of the people that were hurting because of losing their pastor, the great Reverend Timothy Wright, they were upset. You know, I was just thinking, you know, I look like him, but none of that mattered because Grace Tabernacle was hurting so bad from losing their first lady and their pastor simultaneously. So they could have put whoever in there, and some folks would have had a problem with it. Now, there were some that were with me from the beginning. They were encouraging me because they looked at it from the spiritual side of it. But there were some that I thought for sure, because of our friendship, because of how much they knew about me, that they would fall in line with the new leadership. But sometimes people can know too much about you to follow you. And I found that out. I found that to be true. And we went through a major transition there. And I had to tell the people, I know y'all miss Reverend Timothy Wright, but nobody in here misses him more than me.
Yes, sir.
I traveled with him. I lived with him. And nobody misses him more than you. So sometimes people think, you know, and this is a PK situation. Sometimes people take your parents as theirs. They grab and they pull your parents away from you, not remembering that, hey, that was my father too. I loved him too. So it was a major transition in my life, and I felt that I did not feel I was ready for it, but my Bishop Gaylord, put me there and said, whatever you don't know, the people gonna teach you. Yeah. And my father, I look back at it now, and so many of the things that my father was showing me while I was traveling with him was preparing me. He was teaching me without telling me he was teaching me to walk this walk that I am in now. And it was only 3 people that knew I would be the pastor. That was Bishop Jameson, Bishop Figueroa, and Bishop Gaylord, and my brother Dwayne. My father had a discussion with those 4. And they installed me, and I thank God that he has graced me to be there for 12 years now. And I'm kind of, you know, you win some, you lose some, you have good days, you have bad days, but I'm still here. And God has been good to us, and the church has been flourishing, especially in this last season.
Now, for those who are watching who may not know what Kojic means, that's Church of God in Christ.
Yes, Church of God.
We don't want to be presumptuous as to assume that everyone knows lingos and things of that nature. So I just want to say that. And you were right, Pastor Wright, where Kojic did not believe in churches being vacant. And, you know, many Baptist churches would like to be vacant for 3 or 4 years if they can. That's just how that goes. It doesn't mean every situation, every church has its own personality and its own challenges. But I think that covering really makes a difference. So I think that with certainly the parents that you had and the people around your parents, you know, Bishop Figueroa, believe it or not, Bishop Figueroa and I went to high school together. He'll tell you, I'm 2 years younger than Larry. That's the first thing he'll tell you. and Reverend Bishop James and I met when Mount Sinai didn't have evening services. So when you're 18, 19 years old, you're looking for a place to have more church. So we used to go down to the Institutional Church of God in Christ. And that's where I met Bishop Jameson and so all the great singers. And of course, Bishop Figueroa was singing with the gospel expositions at that time.
Wow, that's back in the day.
That's back in the day. And John Hasten, who was on the organ in the movie The Blues Brothers.
Yes.
So, you know, all of that. So now, besides your family, who else has been a great influence in your life?
Yes, besides my family, I have some great mentors. One of my mentors, you know him well, Pastor David Kelly here in Brooklyn, New York. I've been playing for him for over 20 years, and I've learned so much from him. One of the greatest preachers I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And another one of my mentors, one of my musical mentors, Brother David Bratton. David Bratton gave me my first keyboard. I was about maybe 17 years old. And David Bratton gave me my first keyboard. He's the young man that wrote the song Every Praise for Bishop Walker. And another one of my mentors, one of my spiritual fathers, Bishop Bernard Jordan.
Yeah.
Another great man of God that has taken me under his wing. And I just thank God for these spiritual fathers that I have. And my last one is Bishop Frank Anthon White.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
From Zion Cathedral. He's known me all of my life. A lot of people don't know he was playing for my father since 1971, 72. He began playing for my dad. And he knows the Wright brothers when we were little, before we were even born, when they used to rehearse in the house and we would run around in our underwear. So I thank God that he surrounded me with some great spiritual fathers that I can pull on for some wisdom.
Now, let me just ask you this. Let me put this out there with you. What people don't realize is that Reverend David Kelly can't sing. He does have a good voice. He can't sing.
Yes, he can.
He chooses not to. Now, I will say this to you, and this is really true. I can sing. I choose not to. Now, and I say this to put this question out here. Are you Pastor David Wright, who happens to sing, or a singer who happens to pastor? And if not, how do you navigate between those two?
Right. Well, I would say I'm Pastor David Wright, who happens to sing, because I don't think I can sing. I just sing enough to fool the folks and hand the mic over to somebody that can. My father is a unique story, and this is I always bring my dad up when I talk about this. My father says and would tell people he's not a great singer. The only reason he started singing was he taught a song to somebody at Washington Temple when he was a minister of music there. And the young lady that Sunday morning, that Thursday night in rehearsal nailed it. But that Sunday morning, she was upset for some reason. And she looked at him and said, I'm not singing today. And he said to me, from that moment on, he never taught or wrote a song that he couldn't sing himself. Just in case the singer don't show up.
Right.
Get the job done. So I'm a pastor that can sing enough to get by, to sing enough to put it off. But if you get pretty good at singing, that way, if your sermon don't work, you can sing the folks happy.
Well,
and that always works, you know. Pull a song out from under the chair. Get it that way.
The late Dr. William Augustus Jones from the Bethany Baptist Church, he says, he used to say, you know, these singing preachers have an advantage. You know, if the sermon don't work, they got a spare tire and they can sing. Yes, he said, but for me, I got to rim it on in. So he said something like that he got to rim his sermon on in. So
yeah.
Now you made a very, very curious statement the other day on your post. Now, is the rapture here?
I believe it is. I believe, and this is a fact. This is a 100% fact. We are closer today than we were yesterday.
Yeah.
And all of the signs are in place right now of the last days. Every sign that the Bible speaks of is in place. A friend of mine, I was talking to a friend of mine, Dr. Hardin, and he actually thought if the rapture was going to happen, he thought it would happen maybe last year, looking at the shutdown, how the planes were grounded and how the travel would stop. Because as a child, when I would watch movies and wonder about the rapture happening, I'm like, well, what ain't God concerned about the planes falling out the sky? And if God were going to come, that would be the perfect time. So I've truly believed that there may be even another shutdown that's bigger than the one we even had. And the rapture is at hand. And all of the signs are there, and the people really need to get their houses in order and get their houses straight, because we are in the last of the last days.
I want to show some pictures of Pastor Wright and his wife and his children. They really have over the course of the years, you really working as an extension of your parents. And as you get a wonderful, wonderful family we see right there. And his wife looks like straight out of a model. You know, you can see that. I mean, she's just tremendous, and a tremendous songstress, I might add as well. Look at that. Now I know you was younger in that one with the Jimmy Butler haircut going on. So I see that, you know, Jimmy Butler, and she's just beautiful. And then look at this is a beautiful, beautiful couple who have this wonderful relationship, and again have incorporated Christ in their lives. And we're thankful to God for all of them, man. You have such a wonderful, wonderful family, Pastor. God's blessings on you. Now, let me ask you this. Now, what books have you read that inspired you, and books that you would recommend to this particular audience?
Well, a lot of the books that I read coming up, one of my favorite books, and I read it as a book report, but it's called A Streetcar Named Desire.
Oh, yeah.
And I would recommend that book for every family-oriented man or woman, because it'll bring you into the likeness of what we need each other for. And that's my go-to book for all my young people. And then there's also a couple of books, self-help books that I've read. One of Bishop T.D. Jakes' books. The name of it escapes me now, but he has so many great books. But this is maybe his second to last book. Was a great book about finding yourself, knowing your strength, knowing your power. So reading these books will encourage you. My mom used to always say, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in the book.
Put it in the book.
So reading these books will encourage you. There's one book that I'm reading now from Bishop Jordan called Financial Health. Not financial wealth, financial health.
Health.
And it's so many good nuggets in there about how we should honor our finances. Don't love it, but honor our finances. And how to keep your credit. A good man keeps his credit in order. And we need to be taught that kind of stuff. We need to read up on that kind of stuff because they wasn't teaching us that in school when I grew up.
Yeah.
And a lot of us didn't learn that from our parents and even in our households. So you have to get these outside books and bring them into your lives and better yourself and better your family.
Now, other than gospel music, I need you to be transparent now. Other than gospel, what other genres of music do you listen to or even study to?
I love, and I was grooving with you before we started, I love jazz.
Yeah.
I love jazz music. I actually have a jazz band that we do banquets and all of that stuff. And I love neo soul.
Yeah.
Just a few moments ago while I was driving, one of my go-to records, D'Angelo.
Yeah.
Listen, I love it. You know, I love gospel music, but a lot of this music comes out of gospel anyway. So, and I used to do hip hop music back in the late '90s, early 2000s. I was one of the hip hop producers here in the city. I've done tracks for Biggie Small. I've done tracks for Busta Rhymes. I've done all that kind of stuff previously, but I knew walking into where God had me, I couldn't continue in that vein. But I still, every now and then, I listen to it. But I listen to neo soul. Other than gospel, neo soul, I listen to D'Angelo, Erykah Badu, Jill Scott, and jazz music. Oscar Peterson is one of my favorites.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yes, sir.
Man. And these musicians think they're doing something now. Oscar Peterson had the fastest hands.
Yes,
and Winston Marsalis, I love his music. And it's a lot of great jazz music. Jazz music, it just calms you down.
Yes, it does.
It soothes you. So yeah, those are my go-to musics, Pastor.
Now, let me ask you this. Talk about church guys and girls that love sports too, that like sports too.
Yes, church guys like sports too, church girls like sports too. This is my sports show. It's been going on for 3 years now. I'm in my third year. And I started this, I remember back in 2000, or maybe not too long after I started pastoring. A lot of the men saw me playing basketball. We have Timothy Wright basketball classic every summer. So they saw me playing basketball, and somebody pointed at me and said, "That's the pastor." And they said, "Pastors play basketball?" I had to take a step back. I said, "Do you think because I love God that sports are out of my life, that I don't, I'm still a man. I'm still from where you from." So I made t-shirts first, church guys like sports too. So then the girls got offended. Well, we like sports too. And then also my father started a Super Bowl party. Every Super Bowl Sunday, we watched the Super Bowl with all the men at the church. So I did this to let people know that just because you love God,
Yeah.
Just because you say sanctified, got the Holy Ghost, speaking tongues, you still looking at the clock on Sunday to know what time your football team is. You know, we not so holy that we don't know what the Jets is doing or what the Giants are doing. So that's where church guys like sports too come from. And it gets kind of comical and it gets kind of political, but it's all in fun and letting the people know that you can be saved and still have fun.
Okay, so with all of that, church guys and church girls love sport. What do you have against LeBron James? What is it in my Stephen A. Smith voice? What do you have against him?
What do I have this against? LeBron James is a great basketball player. He is not the greatest basketball player. He is a great basketball player. But I've just come from a different era. I don't believe you should chase championships. I don't believe you should leave Cleveland, then go to Miami, and then get tired of Miami, then go to Cleveland, then get tired of Cleveland, then go to LA. Because, well, and I'm gonna be honest, you know, I'm gonna let the cat out the bag. And I cried when it happened. In 2010 was when I started my hatred for LeBron James, because he fooled me and all of New York. I thought he was gonna choose the Knicks. But he said, I'm taking my talents to South Beach. And from that moment on, I said, no, I'm done with it. Because if you want to be the greatest, why not come to the Mecca? Why not come to where basketball originated, where Walt Frazier and Willis Reed won championship banners hanging up? If you're so great, come to New York. And he chose to go to Miami. And that's when my tirade on LeBron James started.
and having said that, the Knicks, come on now, Pastor, do you really think, and I know, you know, I've never been a Manhattan person at all, other than to go shopping on Delancey Street. So, I mean, the Knicks, really? And you gonna get on the Brooklyn Nets and say, they really the Jersey Nets? But they really started out in Long Island before they went to Jersey.
Yeah, they started Long Island, but Long Island ain't part of the five boroughs.
Well, it's not. But if you let Long Islanders tell it, they'll say, well, Long Islanders will say it's on the same line as going to Brooklyn.
That's Brooklyn. Yeah, that's what they say. They say Long Island is part of Brooklyn.
But I don't count that. I don't count the Long Islanders. I don't count.
I don't either. Long Island, and I lived in Long Island for a little while. Long Island don't even feel like New York. It don't smell like New York. You know, even the rats in Long Island are different than the rats in New York. The rats in New York wear chains, and the rats in Long Island got name tags. So, but the Knicks are New York's team. You know, and they tease me because I wasn't even born when they won the championship last.
Yeah, I remember that one though. I remember those two. Yeah.
Yeah, and they act like the Knicks ain't never won nothing. Oh, we've been champions before, and the Knicks, you know, there's some ownership problems there, but I truly think that this Knicks team is going to do something. They're going to do something, because we did beat the Lakers the other night.
Yeah, I know you did. I saw you post that too, and you also said the Nets got stomped. I can't
remember. I think the Nets played the Lakers maybe a day before.
2 days before, yeah.
And I forgot what was the result. I don't remember.
But you just said they got stomped. You said they got pretty much blown out. That's what you said.
Yeah, the Nets. So the Nets lost to the Lakers, and the Knicks beat the Lakers. But that's how things go. The big brother will always look out for the little brother.
Oh man. Pat, my guest, as we wind down, my guest tonight, and I'm really thoroughly enjoying this interview. Pastor David Wright, I really love this brother. I really do, and certainly what the Lord has allowed to accomplish in his life and in his family's life. Please be mindful of the Cash App, brothers and sisters, to be a blessing to this pastor and a friend and a brother beloved. And who certainly has shown himself to be dedicated, because his dad was very, very dedicated to the late Bishop F.D. Washington. Very, very committed, dedicated, and loyal to him, which is not an easy thing to find in any aspect of church today. In any aspect of church today. So we honor him. So please be a blessing to him. Now, Pastor, what words? There's father and son right there. There's son always looking over there. Look at that shot right there, showing them what to play. Got his hands on him and everything. But what I like about you, you're a willing student, Pastor Wright. You just were a willing student.
Yes, sir. And you have to be, anything you want to be better at, you have to be a student first. And anytime you want to lead, you have to be a follower first.
Yeah. Now, Reverend Jackson, flash that so we can make Reverend Wright, Pastor Wright feel good. Flash that Nick eye thing up there. I mean, I'll let you do this time so he can feel a little bit of orange and blue.
There we go. That's the greatest symbol other than the cross. You got the cross, and then you got the Nick sign. There we go. I love it.
Finally, Pastor, what words of transparency and encouragement would you say to those who are watching you right now?
Well, I'll say this, especially with what's going on in our world and our nation today. It's easy to fall into depression. And depression is something that we as Black men, we don't always talk about mental health. We don't always talk about mental stability because we are a pillar of strength. But it's okay to go and talk to somebody and get some strength. It's okay, and you'll have, and being in all transparency, you won't always feel like the strongest man in the room. In all transparency, you will need somebody to help lift you up, to help pull you up, and it's okay to be in that place. It's all right. Don't get so down on yourself if things don't always work out how you feel they should work out. Keep pushing. And I want to use this as a testimony. I always wanted my music to be played on radio stations, and I would get so much slack from radio stations. Well, you got to cut it down to this, or it's not urban enough, or it's not this enough. So we can't play this. We'll play this one, but we can't play another one, and all of these different things. And what God did, he said, if they won't play you on their station, I'll give you your own. And God is in the business of, if it don't work over there, he gonna create something else for you of your own. And you know, I always say that God opens doors, but I like to change that. God creates doors.
Yeah.
He put a door where a wall was. And this is my confidence in him. And then to everybody that's watching and that's listening, be confident in God. Keep pushing forward. If it don't work, it will work. It'll work out for your good. Even what doesn't work works out for your good. Be encouraged and stay on the Lord's side.
Now, when you said the radio station said it wasn't urban enough, that pretty much means it wasn't Black enough. Is that correct, sir? Yeah.
It didn't have, because a lot of gospel music now, some of it even sounds like hip hop. And they're kind of moving away from the traditional sound of choir music like I grew up on.
Yeah.
You know, they're either doing hip hop music or praise and worship music. There's nothing in the middle. So it's been a rough time getting our music played because there's not a lot of choirs out anymore. But I thank God that now there's being a rebirth of that. And I'm gonna play it on my station. And shout out to your daughters. They both sing in my choir.
I know.
Shout out to them.
Yeah. They did. They love you too, man. They really do.
I love them as well. And you too, Pastor, and First Lady.
Well, let me just say, I so thoroughly enjoyed this interview tonight. I mean, it was so engaging in every sense of the word. Got a chance to know you more because the times that I see you was in few places, and then when I would come to Christ Fellowship, I would see you and I would always salute you and put my hand to my heart to greet you. So, but it's so good to talk to you, and I got to tell you, man, I want that. Whenever we do services now, it's not afternoon services, but whenever we finalize something, and depending on your schedule, I like to have you at the Bethlehem Nation to preach one Sunday morning. I really would. But I do know you have responsibilities, but I'm just saying that in advance so that at least you would know that.
You tell me when, and I'll be there, Pastor Camp.
Now, give us a word of prayer, closing words of prayer, if you would, Pastor.
Yes. Father God, we thank you for this evening of fellowship. We pray right now that as we close this out, that if there's anyone that's dealing with anything that's not like you, Father God, we pray that you send your hand of healing, your hand of deliverance, and your hand of power over their lives right now, wherever they may be. God, I pray a special blessing over Pastor Camp. Continue to keep his body strong, continue to keep his mind sharp, continue to keep his family strong, and keep his ministry growing. I pray right now for everybody that has been connected tonight and everybody that wanted to be connected tonight. I pray a unique blessing over them, that let no weapon formed against them prosper. And God, continue to bless us just as you've been doing. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank God.
Thank God. Brothers and sisters, this is a Stellar Award nominee. Whatever you got to do, or whatever I need to do to put a vote in, get that information to you. David Wright for Instrument Album of the Year.
Yes.
Let the organ play. Let the music play. Let the organ play, which is really like what they used to say back in the church back in the day. Make that organ talk, or make it
the organ talk.
That's right.
And before we go, my wife is also nominated for a Stellar Award.
Oh, yes.
Female artist.
Right. Yes.
And historically, this is the first time a husband and wife in separate categories have been nominated the same year on the Stellars.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And she lacks ego. She ain't no ego tripper, right? Not
at all.
I guess not. So again, watch Church Guys Like Sports. I'm promoting it. You need to be on there because he don't take no tea for the fever. He criticized basketball players, ownership, and all you net fans, he'll say, and continue to look at some great social media outlets. Word of Wednesday by Bishop Timothy Clark, Morning Manna by Dr. Johnny Green, BYOB by Minister Cheryl Jordan, Wellness Wednesday by Reverend Vanessa Guest, and The Fee High by Lady Felicia Evans. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Again, tune in next week when our guest will be the Reverend Cynthia McCants. Be well. See you soon, and God keep you steady and well.
Bless you.